Of all the days to be humiliated, today had to be the one where my underwear became public property. I groaned, flattening my hoodie over the embarrassment while the crowd around me laughed. A cruel symphony of teenage malice. That was the moment I realized being reborn into this high school life would be both a blessing and a curse. In my past life, I had been timid, always fading into the background, never daring to stand up for anyone, not even for the boy whose laughter made my chest ache. But reincarnation had a strange sense of irony. This time I was someone else. Someone daring, someone dangerous, someone who could fight. And I did. The first time I saw him after my awakening, he was perched on a bench near the edge of the schoolyard, hands trembling as he scribbled notes in a worn-out notebook. His hair caught the golden afternoon sun, making it look almost like molten chocolate, and I realized again my heart had betrayed me so many times before. This boy, gentle, quiet, oblivious to the attention he deserved, was mine to protect now. Of course, high school being high school, danger came in the form of the popular jocks and their endless cruelty. It started small. A shove here, a whisper there. But I noticed everything, calculated every move. The first time someone dared touch him, I didn't just step, I roared. Not a literal roar, but the kind that made them freeze, their smirks faltering as I closed the distance between me and them. "Back off, Tyler," I said, my voice low, dangerous, carrying an edge that was foreign yet familiar in my new body. Tyler, the school's notorious bully, smirked and leaned closer, thinking he could intimidate me as easily as he did others. "I'm just having fun, new guy," he sneered. I shrugged, letting my leather jacket creak under the motion, leaning just enough to invade his space. "Fun for you, maybe. For him, not so much. And I don't like people who hurt my friends." There it was, the hook that set everything in motion. Tyler hesitated, a flicker of doubt crossing his face before he scoffed and walked away. The boy I was protecting, Ethan, looked at me with wide eyes, a mixture of awe and disbelief painted across his face. You stood up for me?" His voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried a weight that made my chest tighten. "I told you, I'm different now," I replied, shrugging casually, though my heart pounded like a drum. That day, a strange bond began to form. I became the shadow at his side, the rebel with a cause, his quiet protector in a world that seemed determined to belittle him. Our encounters were brief at first. A hand brushing his back when someone shoved him in the hallway, a whispered warning before he entered the cafeteria, a protective arm around his shoulders as we walked home. Each gesture was small, but the intimacy grew, a silent confession blooming in glances and lingering touches. Ethan started noticing the little things too. The way I lingered near his locker, waiting until he was safely inside before disappearing into the crowd. The subtle tilt of my head when I listened to him talk, the faint smirk that hinted at shared secrets. It was dangerous, of course. High school thrives on rumors, and a rebel openly close to a shy boy was an invitation for whispers and judgment. But for some reason, none of it mattered when he looked at me with those cautious, soft eyes. One evening, as autumn painted the sky with fiery hues, we found ourselves alone near the football field. The bleachers were empty, except for us, and the wind carried the scent of fallen leaves and late-season grass. I leaned against the metal railing, watching him struggle to zip up his jacket, fingers fumbling. "Need help?" I asked, stepping closer, my voice teasing but gentle. He blinked up at me, hesitation flickering in his eyes. I think I can manage." I smiled faintly, not pushing, letting him have his space, though my heart ached with every inch that kept us apart. But as he finally succeeded in getting the zipper up, he looked at me differently, less like a boy being saved, more like a boy beginning to notice. Days passed, and our connection deepened. There was a quiet magic in the stolen moments. Sharing a hoodie when the weather turned cold, sitting under the bleachers during lunch to avoid the noise of the cafeteria, laughing at jokes no one else would understand. I could feel my heart weaving a tapestry of affection around him, fragile but unyielding, a bond forged in the fires of protectiveness and longing. But the world has a way of testing such bonds. Tyler, refusing to be ignored, escalated his torment. And one afternoon, the inevitable happened. Ethan was cornered in the schoolyard, books scattered, face red with anger and humiliation. Tyler advanced, smirking, thinking he had the upper hand. I didn't hesitate. I charged across the yard, every ounce of my being focused on the boy who had become my heartbeat. My fists weren't the only weapons. I used words, sharp and biting, letting Tyler know that some lines could never be crossed. When the fight ended, Tyler nursing bruised pride more than bruises, I extended my hand to Ethan. "Come on," I said, breathless, a mix of relief and adrenaline surging through me. He took it, eyes wide, heart racing. And in that moment, as we walked away, side by side, fingers brushing almost deliberately, something unspoken passed between USA promise, a confession, a spark that neither fear nor social expectation could extinguish. The days following were quieter, more intimate. Ethan began to lean into me, subtle touches becoming less accidental, more meaningful. I felt the walls he had built around himself crumble, one gentle smile at a time. And with each passing day, the longing that had once been silent and unrequited now began to echo in shared laughter and lingering glances. It wasn't immediate, this acknowledgement of love, but I saw it. The way he lingered near me longer than necessary, the way his voice softened when he spoke my name, the blush that crept over his cheeks when I complimented something as mundane as his notebook doodles. And then, one afternoon, everything changed. We were sitting on the old wooden bleachers, the late sun casting long shadows across the field, and he turned to me, eyes serious yet sparkling. I think I like you," he admitted, voice trembling but unwavering. "I think I've always, just didn't know how to say it." Time seemed to halt. My chest tightened, my heartbeat echoing in my ears. I wanted to laugh, cry, shout, and hold him all at once. "I like you too," I said, my voice low, but firm, carrying the weight of every protective instinct, every quiet longing, every unspoken word that had built up over months. He smiled, a genuine, unguarded smile that melted something deep inside me. And for the first time since my rebirth, I felt complete. The rebellion, the protection, the late-night walks, the stolen glance had all led here. We sat in comfortable silence after that, hands brushing, fingers intertwining almost by accident. And though the world outside continued its relentless noise, inside that bubble of shared warmth, nothing else mattered. The weeks after our confession were both terrifying and exhilarating. Suddenly, the world seemed sharper. Every look, every whisper in the hallway felt louder than before. We didn't hide exactly, but we didn't flaunt it either. Our closeness was something sacred, delicate, a secret that needed the right time to bloom in the open. Rumors, of course, came fast. They always do. Someone saw us walking too close after school. Another swore they caught me brushing his hair away from his face under the bleachers. In a place like this, where image ruled and conformity was a silent religion, being different meant you had already lost half the battle. Ethan noticed before I did. "They're talking about us," he said one morning, his voice shaking slightly as he avoided my gaze. "Let them," I replied, forcing calm even as my jaw clenched. "But what if they start something again? You fought for me once. I don't want you to have to do it every day just because of me." I reached across the table, my hand finding his beneath the cafeteria's fluorescent lights. "Ethan, I don't fight because of you. I fight for you. There's a difference." His lips parted slightly, a soft exhale escaping. Then he smiled, and for a moment, it was enough to silence the entire room around us. But the peace didn't last. Tyler, that damn name again, couldn't stand losing. His pride, bruised and battered, found new fuel when the gossip reached him. It was one thing to be humiliated by the school's new rebel. It was another to be humiliated for a boy. The day it happened, the sky was overcast, the kind that promised rain but refused to deliver. Classes dragged on, tension thick in the air. I could feel something coming the way animals sense a storm. When I saw Ethan standing near his locker after school, surrounded again by Tyler and his pack, that feeling became reality. "Didn't think you were that type, Ethan," Tyler sneered, his words dripping poison. Guess you like your nights a little rough around the edges, huh? Ethan's hands trembled, clutching his books so tightly the covers bent. Just leave me alone, he said quietly, though his voice wavered. Can't do that, Tyler said, stepping closer. You see, I've got a score to settle. And maybe it's time your boyfriend learns what happens when people cross me. That was when I appeared. The sound of my boots echoing down the hallway made the group freeze for a heartbeat. I didn't need to yell. My silence spoke enough. Tyler, I said evenly, my voice calm but sharp enough to cut glass. You've had your fun. Walk away. He turned, smirking, masking his fear with arrogance. You think you scare me? You're just one guy. Maybe, I said, stepping closer until we were eye to eye. But one guy who's done being quiet. He swung first. It wasn't elegant. A sloppy, rage-filled punch that I dodged easily. My counter was quick, controlled not to hurt him, but to make him stop. He stumbled, fell back against the lockers, the clang echoing through the empty corridor. When it was over, I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired. Tired of anger. Tired of hiding. Ethan rushed to my side, hands trembling as he grabbed my wrist. You shouldn't have done that. I had to, I said, meeting his eyes. Because I won't let anyone make you feel small. Not again. Not ever. He blinked rapidly, his eyes glistening. You're going to get suspended for this. Probably, I said, smiling faintly. Worth it. And then, before I could think, before logic could interfere, he kissed me. Right there, in the middle of the hallway that had witnessed our worst days. He kissed me soft, hesitant at first, then deep and desperate, like he'd been holding it in for far too long. It wasn't perfect. Our teeth clashed, our breaths mingled, and my hands shook, but it was real. When we broke apart, breathless, Ethan whispered, I don't care who sees. Neither did I. The aftermath was messy. There were meetings with the principal, angry parents, a suspension for me that felt more like a vacation. Tyler was reprimanded, though not expelled. The school murmured and buzzed for days, feeding off the drama. But underneath the chaos, something shifted. People started seeing us not as a spectacle, but as something genuine. Some avoided us. Some smiled quietly, offering small nods of understanding. The world didn't crumble like we'd feared. When I returned from suspension, Ethan was waiting for me by the school gates. The autumn air was cold, his breath visible in soft puffs. He wore my old hoodie, the one I'd given him after the fight, and when he saw me, his entire face lit up. Hey, troublemaker, he said, grinning. Hey yourself, I said, reaching out to pull him close. We walked side by side, and for the first time we didn't care who watched. Months passed. Winter crept in, painting the town in gray and frost. But our world was anything but cold. Between the chaos of exams and late-night phone calls, we built something quiet, real, and steady. We went to movies, studied in the library, shared coffee that always went cold because we were too busy laughing to drink it. Once, sitting under the stars on the hood of my car, Ethan leaned against me and whispered, Do you ever think we were meant to meet like this? Like fate gave us a second try. I smiled, my fingers tracing lazy circles on his hand. Maybe fate just got tired of watching me screw it up the first time. He laughed, that sound I'd once only dared to listen to from afar. Now it belonged to me, and for the first time, I allowed myself to believe in something I never had before, a future. The last day of senior year came with sunshine and nostalgia. People signed yearbooks, took pictures, made promises they'd probably never keep. Ethan and I stood behind the bleachers, our place, the same spot where he'd first confessed. He looked up at me, that familiar spark in his eyes. So, what happens next, Mr. Rebel? I smiled. College, maybe a crappy apartment, definitely bad coffee, but mostly, us. He leaned in, resting his forehead against mine. Sounds perfect. And in that moment, I realized something profound. Love isn't always about grand gestures or perfect timing. Sometimes it's just about staying, about showing up, again and again, even when the world tries to pull you apart. We kissed softly, the sound of distant laughter and summer wind filling the silence around us. If there was a lesson in my strange rebirth, it was this: you can't change the past, but you can rewrite the story. And this time I'd written it right. As we walked hand in hand across the empty field, the setting sun behind us painting everything in gold, I felt at peace. The kind that comes when you stop running from who you are and start loving who you've become. That night, lying on the hood of my car again, Ethan curled beside me, his head resting on my shoulder. The sky stretched endlessly above, stars like faint promises. "You know," he murmured, "you're still kind of a troublemaker." I chuckled softly. "And you still love me anyway." He smiled against my chest. "Yeah, I do. And for once, the world didn't need to change for us. It already had." Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with the latest videos.